A very good afternoon and thank you for joining us. Welcome this afternoon to a conversation on the state of disaster preparedness and management in Uganda. And this conversation is done in collaboration with the Office of the Prime Minister. And joining me in the studio, my guest, the Acting Commissioner, Disaster Preparedness and Management, Ms. Rose Nakabugo. A very warm welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
All right, so really the theme of our conversation is early warning for early action. And I think to start it, it would be important for us to have a context on the recurrent disasters in Uganda. We know them, we've lived through them. You know, what's happening now?
Thank you very much. As the public could have been monitoring or could have noted, the country has faced several disasters, especially this year. We have had mainly floods because of the heavy rains we have had since November last year. The water levels in most of our lakes and rivers have increased, overflowing and leading to floods and displacing communities in many parts of the country, especially districts that we find at the shores of lakes and then the riverbanks. Districts we find along Lake Victoria, along Lake Choga, and the shores of Lake Albert have experienced floods. In total, we have around 70 districts that have suffered floods this year. Then heavy rains normally come with landslides, and in some parts of the country, especially the mountainous areas, we have had landslides. You may have had the landslides in Mbale. Mbale had been stable, but this year they experienced landslides. But all along we have had challenges in Bududa, where we have lost many lives. Many people have been displaced due to landslides. Districts like Sironko, Apabulambuli, then we have Manafa and Namisindwa. In the western, we have challenges in the Rwenzori region, especially Bundibujo and Kasese, plus Kabale, and sometimes Kisoro. So
that's just floods and landslides.
And landslides.
And at the beginning of the war, thinking about locusts, and we're wondering what's happening on that front. Every so often they show up, then it's a silent conversation again. Yes,
locusts have also been there since last year. And we know how they started from the areas of Somalia, Ethiopia, moving into Kenya, and then into Uganda. At first, they came off season when we had not yet planted, and the effect was not so great. But of course, they kept reforming because they laid eggs, and we have been monitoring. And they have remained a threat up to today, but we keep monitoring. In some of the countries neighboring Uganda, they have remained a big challenge, and they have eaten up everything green. Then we have the pandemic.
Do we still have locusts in Uganda?
In Uganda, no. Currently, no. But it's not we are not 100% safe because of the eggs that were laid, and once they mature, they can again invade Uganda. Currently, we are monitoring, and we are seeing them in other countries neighboring us, like Somalia.
All right. You're speaking of the pandemic then?
The pandemic is also with us. We have the COVID-19 that we mainly saw here in March, and it has been around. It has increased of late, killing many people. It remains a big risk.
I was looking at information from the Ministry of Health, and just yesterday, 22nd December, 7 people were recorded having died from COVID-19.
True. And when it comes to new cases being captured, you may find us having as many as 300, 600 in a day. And the phase we are in is as bad. So we have to remain vigilant as a country. And as individuals, we need to remain responsible to ourselves, to our lives, and the lives of our families.
Could you give us the disaster landscape? I know you haven't spoken about all the disasters, but at least those were the main ones. What does the disaster landscape for 2020 look like?
2020, the disasters I have spoken about The ones mainly in 2020. We have had mainly in 2020, and you know it is coming to an end.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that is mainly what we have had. But all along, the country has been threatened by drought, which sometimes comes, and it can be as severe, especially in the cattle corridor where we have Karamoja mainly, but you know it crosses into Teso, it goes to Nakasongola, that entire stretch, and sometimes it can lead to death. It can kill people,
Animals. Yeah,
animals.
livestock.
Yeah.
So you're painting this picture of, you know, what we've faced from the beginning of the year, and there was a question here on, you know, what the public should look out for, thinking of predictions for disasters for the rest of the year, but we've really covered the whole year. So perhaps looking into 2021, at least for the very start of 2021, what are we looking at?
2021, according to the weather prediction we have received, we are expecting the rains to recede in many parts of the country. And if all factors remain constant, we may experience some drought for the month of January, February, and possibly end of March, but rains are likely to come back in April, and they may be as heavy still. So we need to be ready, we need to prepare. Once the rains come back, they should not find us as vulnerable.
I know there's usually a general meeting with African countries to discuss disaster preparedness for, you know, and you had one, I think it was in January or February this year.
Yes, even mid this year, we have them, depending, but we usually have them sometimes twice a year.
Okay.
At the beginning, in the middle, and in the middle there. So we had it mid this year. It was done on Zoom. It was a virtual meeting, and it takes place usually in Nairobi for our region. Under ICPAC, it is a center that is supported by IGAD, but that's where the predictions are done for the region. But our team goes and attends under normal circumstances, but this time it was done from here. But they downscale this information that is received to suit our country, to help us know exactly what is going to happen in which region.
I just wanted the viewers to understand that there's an actual process that goes into predicting the patterns. So we're looking at drought at the beginning of the year. What else are we looking at?
It is mainly drought, but usually it comes with pests and diseases, crop pests and animal diseases. It can come with some other, even human diseases. In the past, it used to be measles. Whenever it used to be so dry, they used to say, yes, measles are moving with the air or with wind. But currently, it is mainly drought that we should expect, and
COVID-19
diseases and pests, plus COVID-19, which is still with us. Also, of course, not forgetting the new strain that has been talked about. That's how sometimes things start. You tend to think they are still far from you, but before you know it, they are with you. I
think we've learned our lesson. Why is it important that we prepare for disasters?
Okay, I think disasters are sometimes inevitable. We need to know that they are there. Some of them can be prevented. They can be mitigated. By mitigating, you reduce their impact. And once you prepare, then they find you in a position to reduce their impact. For example, if you know that there will be drought in these months, you don't sell off all your food. You would store some as you prepare to go through the dry season. And in the past, I think our parents used to do that. There is food. We used to have granaries,
yes,
where that kind of food used to be kept for the lean season. And then you also, I mean, there are a number of other things that you put into place to prepare yourself as a person, as a family, as a village, to go through the hard times that may come with a situation.
I was actually going to ask you what things people can start to do now, thinking ahead to the dry season that you say is coming, but also, again, considering COVID-19, then the other diseases that you speak of as well, as a result of the drought.
I think people need to know that those first months of next year will be dry, and they need to set aside food, especially grains, food that can last a little bit longer, to take them through that season. Because usually when there is a drought, food becomes expensive.
Yeah.
And if you have not kept aside some for yourself, then you'll buy it at much more than what you sold it during the bumper harvest. And we need to note that much as rains have come with all those disasters I have talked about, the displacement, the landslides, the floods, but in some areas they have been advantageous. The heavy rains have enabled some parts of the country to grow food. A lot of it they are harvesting, and for some of the items, some of the food crops or items, they are a little bit cheap now because of that. So let's know the lean season will come, and let's prepare accordingly by keeping some of it. Let's not sell all of it, much as we have other basic needs that we would need.
All right. We've touched on COVID-19, and I think, it's important for us to understand how the Ministry of Disaster Preparedness is handling sheltering, in the midst of COVID-19.
Yes, when you talk about shelter, it is mainly for those communities that have been displaced. I talked about the districts in the Albertine, for example, like Bulisa, let me say the entire Bunyoro almost. Toroko, we have displacement in Bulisa, in the Elgon, in Kasese, Minibondibujo, and once people are forced out of their homes, they tend to camp, to be encamped, or to camp somewhere in schools, in whatever. But that is something we try to discourage, and discussions are going on internally to see those that have been displaced and they have nowhere to be or to stay. We have been discussing to find them alternative safe zones where we can relocate them and space them, because now we have COVID with us. The schools at least opened for the candidate classes. Those used to be their areas of abode once they are displaced. So under the circumstances, you find it so challenging, and if we are to save lives, we don't want to keep them in camps. We shall therefore, we are looking at relocating them to safer zones, but to a little bit bigger pieces of land, give them some temporary shelter, and that's where they will stay until the water recedes. One thing that needs to be noted by the people, by the public, is that I've talked about the rains receding, yes, in the coming months, but much as we don't receive rains, these areas keep receiving water. The lakes keep receiving water and overflowing. It has not reduced there, and that's why these districts continue to be affected. We were in Bulisa yesterday with the Prime Minister. We also visited Hoima, we visited in Toroko, and we saw this for ourselves. On consulting the local authorities, they told us this kind of thing has ever happened some years ago, but the water took 6 months, in some cases 6 years, in other cases 3 years to go back to normal. So meaning the situation is not about to end by the going down of rains, because when it rains elsewhere, like in Congo, it comes into Albert, and then it overflows and affects our districts.
When you were speaking about the situation with COVID-19 and also shelter for the displaced communities, I'm curious about how we'll handle the social distancing, do all of that keeping in mind the SOPs.
Yes, as I mentioned, it has been challenging to keep the SOPs in such circumstances where people are just looking for survival. They even forget about COVID-19. But yes, we noted it as a challenge that needs to be addressed quickly. And that's why I'm saying in some of the areas, especially where there is too much flooding, we shall identify some land and we relocate these people to those pieces of land temporarily as we wait for the water to recede.
All right. I think, could you explain how the National Emergency Coordination and Operations Center works? How is the flow of information or linkages with the lower local level administrative levels?
The National Emergency Coordination and Operations Center in Office of the Prime Minister is meant to help us send out early warning information.
Okay.
But how do we do it? How does this system work? Usually the system receives information from other entities or from other systems like UNMA, Uganda National Meteorological Authority. We receive this information on what is likely to happen. And this information comes in English mainly. Okay. But depending on the regions that are going to be affected most, we have to translate this information to ensure that the end user is, we are able to reach out to the end user in a language that they understand. It is supposed even to be simplified. But also, I mentioned about them scaling it down. UNMA scales it down after getting it from ICPAC. Then we use the local government systems. We have the districts where this information ends, and the districts are meant to push it down to sub-counties up to the village level. That's how it should be. And then some of the early warning information has to come from down. For example, how much rain has been received, the weather stations are there, and some of this is what we use to, even what UNMA uses to know what is likely to happen in a given period of time. Currently, in the past, the National Emergency Coordination and Operations Center was at the center without real roots in the districts, in the local governments. But under a new project of strengthening early warning and early action, we are activating, or we are establishing DECOCs in around 11 districts. And then in 11 districts, but we shall have people, individuals who are assigned these responsibilities of even monitoring, of ensuring information has reached the end user, of ensuring it is well packaged to be understood well. We shall have them in 4 regions. We prioritize the 4, including one in the Elgon, one in Karamoja, one in Rwenzori, mainly to be based in Kasese, and another one in West Nile. Okay. So yeah, that's how we zoned.
Just about covers, the larger part of the country. So I guess the zoning, comes in useful. My last question to you, we've all seen the media reports, of all the disasters that have been happening in the country, and not just this previous year, but from years back, and we still see the same disasters happening year in, year out. People are still struggling to recover from them, Kasese, Bududa, and others. Then you have the dual threat of COVID-19 that you've spoken about, and then climate-induced disasters, which will only make a bad situation worse. How is the government planning recovery from the effect of all these disasters?
Yes, disasters, first of all, can be as destructive. This year, we have even lost lives due to drowning, due to landslides. But also, when you look at the infrastructure that we have lost, it is a lot, and a lot of money has been lost in that way. Of course, not even talking about the businesses that we have lost, because, for example, the fishing communities along the shores have not been working, landing sites closed, we know beaches closed. Mm-hmm. We know a lot of other businesses. Now, when you talk about the pandemic, COVID-19, you remember the lockdown, the economy. Disasters can collapse an economy if you're not careful. So, one thing that we did was to ensure that disasters are mainstreamed in the National Development Plan. And when you look at our NDP3, they are well catered for there. Then with the support also from UNDP, we are developing. First of all, we needed to try and capture the economic losses that the country has suffered. The report is not yet complete. I'm yet to look at it and see whether everything is catered for. Otherwise, they can affect various sectors. Talk of energy, you talk of agriculture, education.
And they also even affect just families. You know, we've seen what's happened with a lot of young girls, you know, now out of school.
Exactly.
The abuse and all of that. Families breaking apart because of, you know, things that you can't quantify, I guess. So, yeah. Yes,
the social aspects of it, gender-based violence, many things. So, but now for those that can be possibly, of course, at the end of the day, we have to build back. And we need to, after getting a feel of an understanding of the effects, what the effects have been, we have to develop a recovery and how did we call it? There is a plan. There is a plan that has to be developed. It is being developed, and we shall use that.
When a plan is developed, is it developed for one particular disaster, or like right now with the multitude of, you know?
It has to look at everything, but it is to be consulted upon.
Okay.
A consultant was hired for us, and this consultant has been looking at the economic losses in the various sectors. Okay. He has been moving to the different sectors, but again, at the end of the day, it will happen under a virtual meeting where all sectors will be presented to the findings of the consultant, okay, to ensure everything, as they know it, has been captured. And then I think it's a strategy, then the plan, and see how much we even need to build back. And as we build back, we need to build back better. We also note that some of the infrastructure may not have to be put back where it was before. I'll give you an example. In Kasese, we have had we have had Chilembe Mines Hospital being affected. I don't know, I think this was the third time, and the third time it was destroyed up to almost 90%. What does this tell us? It shows that where the structure is located is not fit for it. It used to be a channel for River Nyamwamba. The
River Nyamwamba is very notorious.
Yes, so very. The previous management of Kasese Copper Mines just how do we call it? Recourse it. They changed its channel. But since we cannot keep since we cannot keep maintaining the rivers they used to do, desilting it regularly, then we cannot afford to have this hospital there.
Okay. I think from our conversation, I would like us to close because our time is fast spent. But thinking about the theme, early warning for early action, I would like you to close perhaps with some early action information for our viewers, starting with, yes, the drought that's coming in January to March, you say, but also COVID-19 and just what a danger it is for the people who are still thinking it is a political statement, but also the new strain that we hear about and what that could potentially mean for us. I mean, there have been questions of why we are not stopping flights coming in from the UK and all of that, delayed reaction. So just help us close the conversation, but with some pointers to what early action from all of us should be.
Thank you very much. Indeed, as you have mentioned, whenever we send out early warning, and that has been partly the challenge, that you inform the public about what is about to happen, and they take it lightly, and not until they have seen. So this time round, we want to send a message that, yes, we send out early warning information for early action, because early warning alone without early action is empty. We send it to save lives, to save livelihoods. So regarding now the situation of COVID-19, as I mentioned, we are in the 4th phase, which is very dangerous. You even stop tracing contacts, and we have seen it has started killing our people. So we need to appreciate the fact that COVID is real, it is there, and we know the ways that we can prevent or we can protect ourselves against it. The SOPs have been given by Ministry of Health. We need to keep sanitizing, we need to keep our masks on, we need to keep social distance. And if we do this, then we would have acted early enough. Prevention is better than cure. I have been saying in the papers, even on TV, on radio, telling us how expensive it is to treat a patient suffering from COVID. It's very expensive. And some of the things are not there, for example, oxygen and others. So let's use the information given to us as, to undertake early action. Let's not wait for the disaster, for the disease to get to us. You may survive it, you may not, once it has got you. But if you protected yourself against it, then you can survive. The new strain is more dangerous, but still preventing it is exactly the same way we are preventing the current strain that we have.
All right.
So let's keep the SOPs.
Thank you very much. And I guess for the people who are still thinking it is non-existent, or they are not afraid of it, or they are strong and young enough to, to handle it, I think it should be for them to consider the other members of their family, perhaps, who have a lot to lose if you're not worried about your own health. Thank you very much once again, Ms. Rose Nakabugo, who is the Acting Commissioner, Disaster Preparedness and Management. And we have been speaking about early warning for early action, looking at all of the things that have happened in the country this past year, but also looking ahead to 2021.